Some of you have been here a while now and might know that I'm a pretty lazy man. But how on earth can you have a healthy diet that's also easy and convenient? Well, if you live in the US, it is your lucky day because I've got the perfect solution for you. Factor offers you the chance to get fresh, ready-made meals delivered directly to your doorstep. They're never frozen, they're full of high quality ingredients and packed with nutritional value too. It even offers meals for those following different lifestyles and diets. So what are you waiting for? Go and click that lovely link at the top of the description now. You'll get plenty of money off your first order with Factor and some off the few after too. You'd be a fool to miss out on an opportunity like that.
Hello and welcome to the Championship review from the On Sport Podcast. I'm Craig Savage. With me as always is Mr. Daniel Cody. We're going to go through every team in their position, starting from the bottom, from 24th all the way up to first, talk about the playoffs, and then we're going to quickly review our predictions from the start of the season. So let's start off with 24th place, and that was Wigan Athletic with 39 points.
Asterisk.
With an asterisk of points deductions and next season's point deductions, but this season-wise, a complete, utter shambles off the pitch.
Yeah, it's such a shame, really. And look, to be fair, we did say this in League One when they got taken over and they were flying to the title, and that is, be careful because you're investing a lot of money here and you don't want to end up back where you were. And exactly that's happened. I mean, as we record this, yesterday was the notification of, is it the 6th time they've not paid wages on time? It's going to be their third 4-point deduction, I think, which will put them back to -12, which is obviously where Liam Richardson saved them from in League One last time. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess.
I think there's a takeover now that's actually going to happen now. I think there's been agreement for the takeover.
Well, let's hope so. But then someone needs to run that club sustainably and just make sure that it actually has a bit of stability for a while. But Sean Maloney put up a fight near the end. You've got to give him credit. Liam Richardson, for me, I mean, sacking him was stupid to start with and paying him off 3 years, doing it 2 weeks after you've given him a contract. But it's just a shame. There were doubts from the summer where there wasn't that much investment, and towards the end, it became inevitable. And points deductions obviously meant they were bottom in the end.
Don't forget the spell of Kolo Toure. We all forget that spell of Kolo Toure.
Ultimately, what cost them, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that spell in December, January was the final straw really for the Wigan season. Yeah. Complete mess, utter mess, and hopefully it all changes for next season despite a points deduction. 23rd place was Blackpool. Second season syndrome for them. 44 points. Tried Michael Appleton, didn't work. Then tried Mick McCarthy, and that didn't work. It got a little bit better under Stephen Critchley. It's not Stephen Critchley, Stephen Dolly. Stephen Critchley is his Neil's best mate, brother. But in the end, not enough for Blackpool.
No, I think when Michael Appleton was appointed in the summer, we both put them to go down, and we were both just about proven right in the end. As you say, they were better under Stephen Dobby, and I maintain now, that game they played against us in April, if they'd have got to half-time at 1-0, it could have been a very different story for them, but very late goal conceded in that half, and then they just fell away towards the end. But look, they're a club that are going to be up there next season. Obviously, you mentioned Neil Critchley.
Neil Critchley, not Stephen.
The confusion there because he's obviously come back. It's very similar to our club Luton when they did it with Nathan Jones, obviously, and biting a bullet and going back. It's a fit that works, and I would expect them to be stable off the pitch, which they are, and being in and around the top 6 in League One next season. So it was always going to be a tough ask after a brilliant first season in the Championship where everyone had them to go down. But yeah, they'll be up there next year. There's no problem with that. And good luck to them because Neil Critchley, in my book, he had a tough time at QPR, but he's a decent coach.
Yeah, I think that was the worst decision for him was to leave to go to help Steven Gerrard, and that didn't last long either. Right, 22nd place was Reading on 44 points.
Asterisk again.
Asterisk again with a points deduction, 6 points deduction, which ultimately
sent them
down.
Yeah, and it was just bizarre, wasn't it? Because they obviously started the season brilliantly. You remember they were in and up and around the playoffs the first half until the World Cup. Even when he was sacked, they had a brilliant home record under Paul Ince. I think it was still top 6 in the Championship when he got sacked. They'd been drawing a few too many towards the end, though. But we said it at the start. They've got an experienced squad. It's all they could get together with the transfer embargo they had, and they were just running out of steam. And unfortunately, they were carrying players on higher wages. They weren't able to get anything like a head of steam away from home or pick up any results at all. And I still maintain sacking Paul Ince was a mistake, because at home they were at least picking up results and looking a threat at times. But it's going to be tough for them. It depends how they run off the pitch next season. But yeah, ultimately the points deduction is what cost them. But to go down with a top half home record has to give them some confidence for next season. If they can get it right off the pitch, then on it should be a bit of a threat.
For me, I think with Reading I feel sorry for the fans of that was coming for a good year or two, and it's finally bitten them on the.
If it hadn't
so
been this year, it would have been next year, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
that's the thing.
It would have been. So whoever takes charge next season at the moment is linked to Chris Wilder to be the man, which might not still. I don't think that's a good move for Chris Wilder either, but his reputation's gone down a bit as well. So this could be a bit of a rekindle for him. But I think Reading might find it tough next season in the League One. I really do. But it only cost them a place in the Championship this season with that points deduction. The team that obviously stayed up thanks to Reading's point deduction was Cardiff City, and a couple of sackings here. Obviously Morrison and Hudson. Lamucci just about kept them up.
Yeah, and now obviously he's gone as well. That manager special is in the eye above. It was our last video.
What was the point, Cardiff?
But he did his job. He got them to stay up. Obviously, defensively, they were far better than all the other teams down there, but they need a goal threat next season. They need to score goals. They need to pick up more points away from home. And again, it just feels like one of those where there's a gradual decline. And I know we've mentioned the controversial new appointment recently, or the outlandish one, we should say. It's a little bit surprising, a bit of a wild card. But for me, they're going to be in the mix again next year unless there's a quite significant overhaul at the club.
Absolutely. And obviously check that video out of our manager review on manager special on Cardiff. 20th place was QPR. Now, at one point of the season, they were top of the Championship. Mick Beale left to go to Rangers. Neil Critchley took charge. He was disastrous. And Gareth Ainsworth, a former player, took over. And just about as well, on 50 points, kept QPR up.
Yeah, it was a really weird season for them. I think we should put the point in as well that Mick Beale lost his last 6 games. So the rot had set in already.
Well, the Wolves' job.
The one that he rejected, it just went downhill after that. And obviously under Critchley, I think a lot of people thought that was going to be okay, and it just didn't work at all. And Gareth Ainsworth, after a couple of very dodgy weeks, just about got them over the line. But we've already seen there's a lot of players linked with leaving the club this summer. There's a lot that have been let out already, and there's going to be a lot of signings in. QPR are going to play, let's be honest, a very different style of football next year. There's going to be a almost completely different squad. And I go back to what I said the summer before when Mick Beale came in. Despite that good start, it fell away in the end. And are they in any better position than when Mark Warburton left? No, they're in a worse one.
Yeah, I think QPR got extremely lucky.
They need a good start next year as well, by the way.
They need some good recruitment before the good start. They need good recruitment. Just about got away with it, QPR this season. Very disappointing for their standards. Next up is Rotherham in 19th place with 50 points as well. Paul Warne left early in the season to go to Derby, and Matt Taylor took over from Exeter, kept them up, and we all thought they were going to go down. So he's done an excellent job.
Yeah, and you've got to be fair. Paul Warne gave them a very good start. They recruited well, and they carried that on in January. Brought in some experienced players, got a couple of big home wins as well. And Matt Taylor's done a good job. Keeping Rotherham in that league with the standard club is a good job. It's going to be a tough job again next season, especially given the 3 that have come up to replace the 3 that have gone down, because I don't think many will be predicting any of them to go down. But yeah, Rotherham, an excellent job, well done. They've got to build on it this year, though. Anything above 21st is success again, and then they can look to push on the year after. But well done, Matt Taylor, because when he came in, I thought it'd be tricky for him.
So did I. Done an excellent job. So well done to Rotherham. Not a yo-yo club anymore. Next up, 18th place was Huddersfield Town on 53 points. Now, come January, I've never thought Huddersfield would be still playing in the Championship. With obviously Danny Schofield start of the season, and then that Rotherham took over, and then Neil Warnock special saved the day. What a genius Neil Warnock is.
Well, yeah, I have to say this as well, because pre-season I ummed and ahed about putting them in the bottom 3 and didn't quite. Obviously, I did Barnsley the year before and got a bit of stick for that, but it worked out in the end. And I thought about January time, as you were saying, I should have put them in my bottom 3. They're gone. And let's be honest, they were virtually gone when Warnock came in. And I mean, the run they went on, that run of 5 games where they picked up 11 points against the top half teams, it saved them. Matty Pearson became the deadliest striker in the championship from centre half. But yeah, you can't help but say well done to Neil Warnock. And now the big question is, what next for Huddersfield? Because Neil Warnock's gone now and they've got to find a way to build for next season, or they're going to be in the mix again. Because we said at the start of the year, they lost over half of that championship playoff final team immediately. And now they've got to find a way to get themselves stable in the championship because, as we said, there's not many poor clubs down the bottom there. And they're going to be one of the favourites straight away to go down.
Well, Warnock's still on the contract till July. So he could take, you never know, Warnock. He could change his mind. But obviously, Warnock is a legend. And I thought Huddersfield were done. They were completely done for the managerial appointments from the summer to October. Shocking appointments, absolutely shocking. And you look at Danny Scofield now, he just got sacked from Doncaster. Just terrible appointments. But Warnock use that big championship experience, got him over the line. So he's done something. He's just a genius. Yeah. Right, moving on to 17th spot and Birmingham City on 53 points. Not much to say about Birmingham. They just nothing like wasn't near the bottom three really. Wasn't going to be challenging up for the top half of the table. Stability. It was a very stable club this year, despite the off-field rubbish. Again, playing on the field wise, steady.
Well, that's what I was going to say, and John Eustace deserves credit for that because there's a lot of other clubs where there's been instability off the pitch and it's carried on over. And we, like many others, thought Birmingham were going to be right in the relegation dogfight this year. And while they weren't that many points away in the end, they were never really in threat, and he deserves big credit for that. They are another one a bit like some of the ones we've mentioned a bit earlier on, though, where it just feels like it's a ticking time bomb off the pitch and it's which year is it going to go wrong. And I hope for John Eustace, obviously, they can play around that. There's a few big earners, the experienced players that have been released this summer. Are they going to change strategy at all? You just have to hope that he can keep doing what he's doing on the pitch. It wasn't pretty to watch a lot of the time, it's got to be said, but you've got to work with the cards you've got. And for my book, he did a very good job. And to most people who had them to go down, including us, he's overachieved. So well done to him, but they're one I'm really worried about next year if they don't sort the rank out off the pitch.
Moving on, 16th spot, also on 53 points, was Stoke. Stoke. Michael O'Neill at the start got sacked. Alex Neil took over. Nothing. It's flat again at Stoke.
I mean, probably 2.5 years we've spent now moaning about them and Bristol City being the hardest teams to predict in the Championship. Stoke had that absolutely glorious run for about 4 or 5 games, looked like the best team in the world around March time, and then it just collapsed again. They're going to have a massive overhaul this summer. Alex Neil is going to be trusted with the rebuild, but if it doesn't start well, what are we going to see? Obviously, there's no more of those big earners from the Premier League days on the books now, so there isn't really an excuse after this year, but it's one where you just honestly don't know what to say for next season. They could push for the top 6 or be in a relegation fight. You just never know. Truth of the matter is, they'll probably end up about 16th again.
Yeah, I agree, to be fair. It's considering the strength of the league next season, I could still see them there. If the recruitment's got to be good, the stars got to be good. Lose 1 or 2 games and they falter very easily. Well, another team did fall, but they finished a place above this team. It's Hull City, who finished in 15th with 58 points. Shota Arveladze sacked a day of the game against Luton, and Liam Rosenior took over and done very well.
Well, this is the thing. I think he did very well as well. Obviously, they became less exciting to watch, but again, he played to the team he had and made sure they got the results. And in the end, they were never in threat. A little bit worried about the fact that they're talking about him potentially being let go for not playing exciting enough football. I'll say it now, if Hull let Liam Rosenior go this summer, they'll be in my bottom 3 next year. If they keep him, they'll be nowhere near it because he was the difference for me. They were going in the wrong direction, and we all want to play lovely football, but at times you've got to accept what your strengths are. And for Hull, they were so much more resolute under him. They looked a better side, and with the right additions under his management, I think he's one of the best young coaches in the Championship. I think they'll have a very good year next year, but that's a big if, given what's happened with the rumblings around the ownership and what he might want to do in the summer.
Well, he wants to play that attractive football. That's what he said when he took over at Hull last year. And he's going to have to spend a lot of money to get that attractive football he wants. But I have full faith in Louis Mourinho for next season anyway, if he's still in charge.
Agreed.
Don't know why this guy's still in charge. Nigel Pearson at Bristol City, 14th place and 59 points. Yes, I'm anti-Bristol City. I don't care. 59 points, best manager in the league, as a player said. And this is where I expected Bristol City to finish.
Yeah, I think if I'm taking away your bias, I think he's done an okay job. He's got a mid-table budget in the Championship. He's finished in mid-table. And his stability, which I guess a lot of clubs haven't got. They're never in threat of going down. Obviously, there's that little bit from you with Cal Naismith, and then in January, Harry Cornick. And
yeah, I've got no problem with Harry Cornick.
Obviously, they're doing a bit of work already early this summer as well. I think they'll be in and around mid-table again next year, but they're just a stable Championship club. They're not particularly exciting. Semenyo going in January was a huge loss because they were in decent form at that point, and obviously they went on that little cup run as well. But
well, let's see if Alex Scott gets a move in the summer.
Yeah, but potentially that gives Nigel Pearson the room to bring in 5 or 6 players, which is a luxury he didn't really have the year before. So maybe it does give him a little opportunity. But in my opinion, it's par for the course is the perfect way to sum that up. They finished where we expected. They did what we expected, and no surprises.
13th place with 62 points was Norwich City, a next very surprised team to be that low, considering they were in the Premier League the season before. Dean Smith in charge to start with, got sacked after the game against Luton.
Yep,
in Boxing Day. David Wagner took over, and you thought there was a little bit of spell to start with. The new manager bounce was there, and it really faltered after that.
Yeah, and this is a huge summer now for Norwich. I mean, we and virtually everyone else had them in the top 2 this year in our predictions because it's what Norwich do, isn't it? They go down, they come back up. They go down, they come back up. But not this time around. Finishing the bottom half's a bitter blow in the end, albeit virtually everyone down to them was in a playoff mix until 2 games to go. But it's a big summer. You've got Timu Pukki moving on. You've got a few of those yo-yo players, the steadfast ones that have moved on. They've already started to bring different types of players in. Jack Stacey's gone to the club already. You've got a lot of turnover going at Norwich this year, and probably the same for a few clubs there. We said with Stoke already. There's going to be a few clubs coming up now where there's going to be a big overhaul in the summer, and clubs that missed out this year who would expect to be up there. And if they all get it right, I tell you what, the battle for the top 6 next year will be remarkable. But Norwich, they will fully expect to be in it after a dismal end to the season.
Yeah, I think that the expectation minimum is top 6, regardless. It has to be that way for Norwich. Obviously, still got parachute payments, so they can still splash the cash if they wanted to. They can get some money in. Obviously, Max Aarons will probably be a guy that they'll probably sell for a lot of money.
And a lot of the big earners will go, won't they? So,
but obviously Pukki was still out of contract now, so he's gone. Wage budget will go down a bit. Depends on who they recruit in the summer. 12th spot is Preston North End on 63 points. Preston at the start were remarkable 1-goal specialists, 1-0 to the Preston and barely conceding any goals. And Brad Potts scoring a goal of the season. In my opinion, Brad Potts scored the goal of the season against Luton, even though it was given to someone else. We'll mention them in a second. Good start, bad middle, okay, 3/4 of that, and then just faltered.
They did all right.
I expected that. I think Ryan Lowe's done a very good job.
Yeah, to get them within 6 points of the playoffs, I think is a decent season. Obviously, you mentioned that remarkable thing. I think it was after 12 games, they'd scored 4 and conceded 4, which was just so many 0-0s and 1-0s, like you say. But in the end, it opened up a bit, and probably to their detriment, if we're being honest. And again, it's going to be another tough summer for them. Ultimately, they never replaced the goals of Cameron Archer from the loan spell the second half of the season before. And if they'd had that, they probably would have been in and near the top 6. So that's definitely a focus for the summer. They've got a few players they need to add in, but a solid season and something to build on potentially.
Yeah, I 100% agree. They definitely need a striker because they have not scored a lot of goals. How many goals they scored in? 45. 45. That's ridiculous. And to be 12th is just championship for you. So very, very low. Watford, 11th spot on 63 points as well. Rob Edwards took charge at the start after 10 games. He was a mystery man after that. I don't know what happened to him.
We must not milk this. We must not milk it.
And Slaven Bilic took over. Had a lot of injuries. and then he got sacked, and then Chris Wilder took over to the end of the season. This was probably the worst season Watford fans will have for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I mean, let's be fair. Take away the Luton bias. It's obvious who we support. We all thought they were going to be in the top 6, similar to Norwich. We all thought they were going to be up there. On paper at the start of the season, they've got a good team. By the way, they started all right under Rob Edwards. 1 point outside the playoffs, had lost 2 games. All of their fixtures had been against the top half teams virtually. They were in the mix. Why they sacked him, I don't know. Under Bilic, like you say, they were going along okay despite a lot of injuries. Young players were getting in doing okay. Why they sacked him, I'm not quite sure. And Chris Wilder basically didn't want to be there from the minute he arrived, did he? He was just ready to give a slanging match and shout people out. And it has become a bit of a joke. I do rate the appointment of Valerian Ismail. We've already talked about it this summer. He's a good coach, and given time, we'll get it right. But time is a word that is not known in Watford. It's not in the vocabulary. It's not in the dictionaries. And that's going to be the problem for them. But we're going to expect an overhaul. They've got big money in for João Pedro already. There's a few big earners off the books. And they'll probably be waving goodbye to a few more, which, good job. If Trostekon comes back from his loan, he can do that for them.
Sure is. Ismail Assar's got to go. Surely. If they're keeping him, what is he doing for his career, let alone Watford's wage budget? Right. So that's 11th. 10th spot was Swansea with 66 points. Russell Martin actually, one of the few managers that actually survived the whole season until it gets to Southampton.
Until about next week, yeah.
Until about next week. It's exactly the same for Swansea. Good in spells. Can't defend from the back at times, concede silly goals, but somehow finished 10th.
Well, to be fair, they finished the season remarkably well. They had a horrible spell between January and March. There was obviously a lot of contempt off the pitch and talk of Russell Martin going when they lost out on Carlin Grant, where they didn't get the deal done in time on deadline day. Defensively, they did have a few injuries, which did harm them at stages. There was one game where they let in 3 goals from set pieces because they just didn't have centre-halves on the pitch. We saw the struggles that can cause with Sunderland in the playoff semi-final, which we'll get to later. But for Swansea, overall, you've got to be honest, on paper with the squad they've got, it's a good season on paper. But Russell Martin's obviously probably going to be off. It's almost done to Southampton as we record this. It's just arguing about the compensation. And I worry for Swansea a bit for next season because, yes, they were playing very lovely keep ball, but ultimately, if they change the style a bit, they've not really got the players to do so. If they keep the same, you're going to need to get the right appointment. And I know there's all the silly stats about passes completed and all of that. And in my opinion, it's a little bit tedious to watch at times, but ultimately it's a good season. And there were 3 points off the playoffs, which at the start of the year, I don't think any of us would have predicted.
No, I think the passing stats means absolutely nothing.
Oh yeah,
if you're not in the top,
for that.
If you're not in the top 6, it means nothing to me. Like, I've seen the goals Swansea concede because they tried to overdo it. But when they do get it right, it's some really good stuff. Lost Obafemi in January as well. Perot obviously stepped up again. Yeah, I think if the recruitment's got to be good, the recruitment obviously hasn't been much recruitment at Swansea the last couple of years, but if they can get it right this year with a bit of compensation, they can do it.
Sorry, they conceded the 5th most goals in the league, which is...
See, that sums up my point. 9th spot was West Bromwich. West Brom. They had Steve Bruce to start with. That was extremely boring. Carlos Coberan took over, and he had that spell of like, they're going to push for the top 2 here. They could push it, but then they faltered away as well.
Yeah, it was sort of similar to Borough, wasn't it? Both managers came in at similar times, and they just flew up the table, the 2 of them. Obviously, West Brom's one fell away a little bit. They've got good players in that team. I saw John Swift was top of the chances created, but it has been a bit of a problem for West Brom is putting the ball in the back of the net for the amount of chances they were creating. And that was a problem under Bruce as well. They've had a lot of injuries in attacking areas. It was clear that Corberan was happy to let Carlin Grant go in January. Didn't go through in the end, but I think we'll see a striker come in for West Brom. I think we'll see 1 or 2 additions in defence, and as it stands with Corberan in charge, I wouldn't back against them for top 6 next year.
No, Daryl DK's out injured again, which is a blow.
But since he came in, they're a top 6 side, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. I think it's 10 games too late for them, I think, in my opinion. Right, next up after West Brom is Millwall. How they finished 8th, I don't know. They finished on 68 points. I would say it was a very solid season, and then it threw all the way
The
in the
last
second
45
half.
minutes. Yeah.
It's the second half of the game on the last game of the season. I don't know how they should have been in the top 6 for me.
It's inexcusable. From 3-1 up against a side that scored less than anyone else in the top 11 this year, you can't excuse it. From 3-1 up on going into the final half of the season. I'm sorry. They're a club that have overachieved on budget again. Gary Rowett's done a good job there. They didn't finish the season brilliantly. They had some problems with injury, but ultimately that final day may haunt them, and it's the reaction to that, because it could be something that carries over to next season if they're not careful. But again, we know what Mill were going to do. We know they're going to be solid next year. But yeah, that was such a devastating way to do it. Yeah, missed opportunity.
Huge missed opportunity for them. 7th spot is Blackburn Rovers on 69 points, just missing out on the playoffs by goal difference, despite winning the final game against Millwall. I've been quite negative on Blackburn because there's either been good or bad. They didn't really draw barely drew any games.
They didn't draw any of the first 27.
Yes, in the end they drew 9. How that happened?
They became draw specialists the last 10 weeks of the season.
John Dale Thomason's been linked with Leeds. I think anyone's been linked with Leeds at the moment. Brereton Diaz gone on a free. I don't expect much of Blackburn next season.
I don't know. Brereton Diaz didn't have a great second half of the year. Ultimately, this is roughly where they were under Tony Mowbray a couple of years before. They were in and around the playoff mix. They started well, they faded away. Didn't score enough goals this year, so it's how they replace Brereton Diaz. The other strikers in that team, or the other attacking players, probably aren't as creative, and they have gradually lost creative players over the last year or two. But yeah, if they can turn a few of those defeats into draws, they'll be in the playoffs next year. But that's a pretty big effort at the moment.
We're talking about the playoffs teams now, but we won't talk about the playoff games themselves. So we'll do the 46 games. So 6th place was Sunderland. Crept in on the final day on 69 points with that massive goal difference ahead of Blackburn Rovers and Millwall bottling it. We said Sunderland would be around there, to be fair.
You did. I can't take credit. I can't take credit.
I did, but an excellent season, and obviously Alex Neil to start with, and then Tony Mowbray. Alex Neil buggered off to Stoke to do nothing, and then Tony Mowbray took over, and I would probably say massively overachieved.
Oh, gotcha. He did a wonderful job. In truth, it was probably a match made in heaven, the way that Sunderland wanted to play, the young squad they had. Tony Mowbray mastered that at Blackburn and overachieved with them for a number of years on the budget. So you've got to give him massive credit. Of course, they were massively hit by injuries towards the end of the season and going into the playoffs, which ultimately may have cost them. And while I could make a whole separate video on Amad Diallo's diving, there is no doubt they are or were an incredibly exciting team to watch going forward. And you've got to bear in mind, he got them in the top 6 with their star striker from last year playing 10 games. Ellis Sims recalled on deadline day in January to get them into the top 6. For me, he's a contender for manager of the year. He's done a remarkable job, and he played really good stuff to watch as well, particularly on the road. So I think even Tony Mowbray's won you over this year.
No, after the post-match, we'll get to the playoffs anyway. I'll give you my opinion on Tony Mowbray. 5th place is Coventry City. Start of the season, they couldn't play at home because the pitch was gone, was knackered from the Commonwealth Games. Bottom for the good first third of the season, but had that excellent run under Mark Robbins and finishing 5th place.
I mean, I don't know how to sum this up other than to look at Coventry, look at Luton, look at Millwall until the final day as well. Why do more clubs not opt for stability? Because seriously, it works. Mark Robbins has done an incredible job. Obviously, we'll get to the playoff final later. It was 2 of the greatest stories in the EFL coming together in the final. And look, Coventry have been 1 year behind Luton in terms of where they've been finishing each time. So hopefully they'll do it again next year, because I think we've both got a newfound respect for Coventry fans after last Saturday. And look, another great season, a good squad. It's going to be a big summer for them with Gilcares and possibly Hamer moving on. They're going to have to get recruitment right, but they're a club again. They're a well-oiled machine at the moment with the playing staff and the backroom staff on the playing side. The takeover stuff sorted, the stadium lease stuff sorted. If they can get the recruitment right this summer, it's onwards and upwards again. And let's be fair, they're a kick away from the Premier League.
And spoilers for that. 4th place was Middlesbrough. Chris Wilder started the season, didn't do well. They were near the bottom 3 at a time. Michael Carrick in his first managerial role apart from the interim of Man United, and he completely changed that club around, got them to the top 3 at one point, and then they were challenging Sheffield United for that second spot, and then Luton got involved, spoiled the party a little bit, and Middlesbrough faded away and finishing on 75 points.
Yeah, but again, probably a bit like you said with West Brom, just 10 games too late. Carrick had been in very early in the season. They arguably would have been right up there and challenging the top 2. It's going to be a very big summer for them. A couple of their star players on loan, Cameron Archer again being one of them. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do this summer, whether they stick or twist, whether he can sustain it, because as you say, that bounce that did last half a season, in fairness, just faded a little bit towards the end. And obviously the playoffs in the end was a little bit underwhelming for them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back. But you've got to commend the job he did, because I don't think many of us, when he took over with them in the relegation zone, I don't think many expected that.
No, Carrick was excellent. Chuba Akpom was out the side at that time,
and dropping him to number 10 was genius.
Yeah, and that is Championship's top goal scorer, and obviously having the Archer there, them two worked very well together, and they played some really good, excellent, very sharp, quick football. The game I watched at Kenilworth Road, even though it wasn't their strongest side, but the football they played was excellent stuff, and very, very impressed with that. Next up, third place was Luton Town. They finished on 80 points. Nathan Jones left in October, November for Southampton. That went well. And the man took over was Rob Edwards, who was at Watford at the start of the season. And a tale of two halves, really. The World Cup break was probably the best thing that happened to Luton, really, because it gave Rob Edwards a month to have a look at the players that he has. And they went on that incredible run to the end of the season.
Yeah, and again, recruitment was the driving force behind it. Another ballsy managerial call by the board, which worked out brilliantly. Obviously, some of the additions in January made a difference. We're biased on this front. For me, the season changed on Marvellous Nakamba. Having a disciplined holding midfielder just allowed the 2 wing-backs and the 2 centre-mids to play 5 yards higher up the pitch. And look, most teams don't like facing 2 big strikers, and 2 big strikers with talent makes it even better. Obviously, it ended in glory. It's still not quite surreal saying it's 10 days to Premier League fixtures day. I didn't think I'd be looking forward to that so much, but 10 days to go.
Oh, wow.
But honestly, remarkable. And just like the Coventry one a couple before, if you've got everyone on the pitch, good people pulling in the same direction, you can achieve good things. And for those 2, spoiler, to be in a Championship playoff final with 2 of the 5 lowest wage budgets and agent fees budgets in the Championship is a remarkable story.
Yeah, excellent season for that. That projection graph proves that it's obviously still going higher and higher by the year, and already it's going to be higher than this season. Spoilers. Moving on to the automatic spots now. Sheffield United finished in second place with a very respectable 91 points. Sheffield United were always going to be up there, really, and they had a little bit of wobble on heck and bottom. Luton were closing in, Middlesbrough were closing in on them, but they held strong and they were excellent.
Yeah, they were excellent. He's probably, in the history of this podcast, the one manager special that we've got spectacularly wrong, because I don't think either of us thought he was going to do what he's done, and we were all a little surprised when he got the job permanently. But what a job he's done over a year and a half to build on the playoff disappointment of last year, to have them in the top 2, well, virtually the whole season, because them and Norwich ran away at the start. They both dropped off a little, but then Sheffield United stayed strong. And he got to an FA Cup semi-final as well at Wembley. I mean, he's had a remarkable season with off-the-pitch constraints. They couldn't do anything in January. And obviously, all of their financial problems are now resolved by getting to the Premier League this summer. Do you know what? They'll have a good go of it because they've got some good players there. And I kind of liken it to the Burnley at first under Sean Dyche, where they came down and went back up again. Ironic, given who we'll be talking about in a minute. But the fact that they're in a stronger position now going back up, they're going to need to add to the squad, of course. But they had a great season and they thoroughly deserve to be in the top 2. Finishing strongly under pressure as well. Deserve massive credit.
Yeah, I said when Sheffield United came to Kenilworth Road back in August, I think it was, or early September, they were the best team. I think they were do well this season. I was very impressed with them, and they did hold strong for pretty much the whole season. And they said they got a little bit nervy because the teams were catching up and they were dropping some points at home, but Yeah, I thought they were always going to be up there. They're never the FA Cup run didn't bother them at all. So
It helped, if anything.
probably was a good thing. Just kept the run, kept momentum going. So that's probably what they needed. And Paul hasn't done the job. So he's done very well this season. So I've got a lot of respect for that. And our champions of the championship this season of 2022-23 were Burnley. And
Never in
bloody
doubt.
hell, never in doubt. Vincent Kompany's first managerial job in England, and he completely destroyed the league.
Yeah, I mean, 3 defeats in a championship 46-game season is a remarkable effort. And you know what? It was quite interesting because at the start of the season, obviously, they were drawing a lot of games, virtually every other game. And at the time, it was looked at as maybe a negative. But you look back at it now, he built a solid defensive foundation. They loved the Championship's favourite scoreline at the start of the season. And then once the goals started flowing as well, they were unbelievable. And he imprinted his style of football. He deserves more credit than he gets, to be honest, because he's completely revolutionised the style of the club. He's completely changed the way they play football. He's taken them up in style. I still hold the thought that he's going to have to change things a bit next season to compete in the Premier League. We've seen that with Nottingham Forest, for example, this year in terms of style of play. But you can't begrudge them winning the league. 100 points, the best defence in the league, the best attack in the league, and just relentless. They were absolutely brilliant. And even in games when they weren't at their best, they very rarely looked like losing, which is the ultimate sign of champions. Massive credit to Vincent Kompany, and please don't steal Cody Drameh. Thank you.
Yeah, please, Burnley, don't do that. No, yeah, Burnley were excellent for that season. I think they won. This sound biased now. It's not really biased. That game against Luton where they had to graft for that win. Okay, it was a penalty, but they had to really graft that. And then I think Kompany laid that as the game that they were going up and were going to win the league, because you have to earn, and respect was earned that day as well. So they're completely blew this league apart. And Matson and Teller, two
Teller,
fantastic players.
sensational. Find
and he's only alone. He's alone still. Well, I'm sure he'll go next season to Burnley. But yeah, I think we've just add a couple of experienced Premier League players in there. Obviously, they've got Jack Cork there as well. Barnes
going back.
I don't think it's so.
You never know.
To be fair, he could be the man to replace Ashley Barnes. So
you never know.
That could work for him, but we'll have to wait and see. But Burnley thoroughly deserved 101 points. Could have easily smashed Reading's record easily.
Brilliant to watch.
And for Reading to tweet about that point score, that's just embarrassing. Don't do that ever again. But that is the league table done. Let's move on to the playoffs. And once again, the playoff brings drama.
Who won them, Craig? I don't remember.
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. But let's talk about this. I know you've done your predictions for the semi-final and the final, but let's quickly go through those games because I'm here now. Luton Sunderland started the stadium of light. The atmosphere, bloody hell, that was scary. And Sunderland won that first leg by 2-1. Not a bad thing for Luton. I thought Luton played very well in the first half, dropped off second half. Sunderland did play well, but didn't really create that many chances, Sunderland. But I think the atmosphere got them over the line especially in that first leg, and Diallo's strike was just sensational. Not gonna lie about that. Second leg, Kenilworth Road, you were there. Atmosphere was rocking. It's probably the best I've seen Kenilworth Road, obviously apart from the Watford game, in a very, very long time. And Osho and Lockyer with the 2 goals, and Luton actually won a playoff semi-final in the EFL for the first time.
Yeah, first time in my life that it wasn't playoff heartbreak as a Luton fan, but I think, like we say, the first leg. I mean, both teams.
Both ties were. I think both ties.
The home atmosphere got both teams over the line at home. Let's be honest with you. The first leg, there could have been a red card apiece. I'm quite glad in a way there wasn't, because if we'd lost Nakamba, it would have been a problem. And he was fairly fortunate to stay on the pitch, as was Gelhardt for an elbow on Lockyer. But fair play to the referee, kept everyone on the pitch, and it ended up working out. Second leg, those injuries at centre half for Sunderland cost them, because
it finally cracked. I think with the early goal from Osho, but
it was all set pieces, and every set piece Luton looked like scoring. Luton nearly scored one in their own net as well, because Sunderland couldn't win header in their own box, so Adebayo nearly put one in for him as well. But yeah, it was that's ultimately what decided the tie.
And the second playoff game was Middlesbrough versus Coventry, 0-0 after the first leg at the CBS, and then back at the Riverside, Coventry took it with Harmer's goal, 1-0 tie over. I'll say both Middlesbrough and Sunderland fans both probably expected to be a Middlesbrough Sunderland final. obviously didn't work that way. But Middlesbrough very underachieved in that playoff game. They didn't really look like they were gonna find a way from that a stubborn Coventry side, especially in that second leg.
Yeah, and it was a shame, really, wasn't it? Because after playing such good football and such aggressive football under Michael Carrick, it was a bit of a whimper in the two legs. They barely had a shot on target. They barely looked like scoring, and obviously in the end didn't score. But Coventry worked it down to a T. They were very resolute, very organised, and Middlesbrough are going to have to learn a bit more about that because more sides are going to play that way against them next year now. They're going to try and sit back. They're going to try and avoid giving them space. And that's going to be the test whether they can break that down rather than the space they've had in behind at times this year. So very disappointing the way it ended for Borough. But look, when Michael Carrick took over, they would have been happy just to be in there. And for Coventry, obviously, a great achievement to get to the final. Two brilliant footballing stories in the final. And look, we're obviously supporting one of the sides in the game you're about to discuss, but as a neutral, you couldn't really lose that weekend.
I think it's forgetting this for the moment. I think it's a great story for having that fairy tale story, and it gives ambition for the lower league sides that say, look at these two teams. It proves that you can do it. All these big teams, obviously, just come down from Premier, your Watford, your Norwiches. Look how they struggle this season. Look at the smaller, even though Coventry are a big side, Luton are a big side, but look where they come from. But we get to the final now, Wembley Stadium. Saturday, May the 27th. Remember the date for a very, very long time. This is the first time we spoke about the game.
Do I get the flag out now?
My flag's in the other room. I can't get it out.
I'll get mine out for you. It gets unravelled. Here we go.
Let's talk about the day. I was saying we shouldn't be speaking a bit biased now. This is where the bias kicks in. Sorry, guys, for you Championship fans. And obviously, we thank you for obviously listening to us for the whole year. But Luton are in the Premier League. But it didn't start particularly well. Obviously, the collapse of obviously Tom Lockyer, and obviously we're glad that he's obviously home now. But it was a huge worry losing your captain and Luton's player of the year.
Yeah, and let's be fair, in terms of first half performance, surprisingly, it had no impact at all. Luton were relentless first half. I think we all have the same assumption, don't we? Luton could have been out of sight by half time. The fact that it was only one in the second half, Coventry could have very easily turned it around and won it by 1 or 2 because they were excellent second half. It was the classic cliche game of two halves, but Luton responded brilliantly to setbacks as they have done all year and all decade, in fairness. Coventry never gave up, which has been part of their story the last 5 years, particularly this season, coming from, as you say, bottom of the league earlier in the season, not being able to play at home to arriving in the playoffs and in 5th place. And ultimately, I kind of feel the fact that it was two sides that maybe didn't expect to be there or perhaps would have been underdogs for promotion, it made it a better final. Because you didn't have a cagey game, did you? You had two teams. It was almost like basketball, just going to win it.
Being in there, it felt cagey and it felt sickening, really. It was
but when you watch it back, it was an open game, wasn't it?
It was a cracking game of football, not going to lie. But second half, Coventry got back into the game. They had to get back into the game. They probably got a rollick in half time. They were that poor.
They went 2-1, didn't they?
Then the equaliser happened from Harmer. Great play by Gyökeres. That noise, bloody hell. I don't know, obviously, from your higher up, the noise for Coventry's goal was frightening.
It was a great
It was excellent. It was excellent atmosphere. And Coventry fans, you should hold yourself high because you were excellent throughout the day. And obviously, penalties is penalties end of the day. And obviously, unfortunately, Darbo, I say unfortunately, fortunately from my point of view, from a biased point of view, but unfortunately, Darbo was the man that missed the target. And
can we just say the other 11 penalties
were excellent.
Bloody hell.
Penalties were excellent.
Keepers
both sides. Yeah, excellent for both sides. But I said Darbo was the one that missed, and the dream for us personally has finally come true. If you said to me 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that you'll be winning a playoff final at Wembley to go to the Premier League, I'd be like, you're absolutely mad. Unfortunately, it had to be someone to lose, and also unfortunately, it was Coventry. But Luton, third best team in the league, wins the playoffs. Just about got it right. So it's probably the best time for Luton to get out of this league, because I don't think they would have got out of the league next season, out of the Championship to the Premier League, should I say, because that league next season is going to be ridiculously hard.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to predict depending on who decides coming down a point as managers. But yeah, it's a great time to get out. I still think Coventry will be right up there next year because they're a well-run club.
I have a lot of respect for Coventry.
Mark Robins is a brilliant manager, in my opinion. So hopefully they'll be up there next year. But as you say, it's the completion of a ridiculous story, isn't it? From first tier to fifth tier back to first, to make a Premier League debut, to have a player make 4 promotions in there. 3 others had 3 of the promotions, and yeah, it was just a wonderful day.
Kenilworth Road gets Premier League football, and I drive past the ground pretty much every day, and I look at it, and I'm like, this ground's a Premier League ground. And
if there are any Premier League fans watching, we know what the away end looks like. We really do know already. Thank you.
We've been there many times. We know what the away end's like.
But what
now there's tourists. There's tourists now. They're taking photos outside. It's crazy. That is our championship view. Let's have a quick mini view of what we predicted at the start of the season. So on the screen right now, you will see our predictions.
We didn't do too bad.
No, we'll start with yours, Cody. 24th place, you had Rotherham.
Both got that wrong.
Yeah, we both had 24th. 23rd, you had Blackpool, and I had Birmingham. Blackpool did finish in 23rd place, so well done there. I had Blackpool in 22nd, just slightly off, and you had Birmingham in 22nd, so both wrong on Birmingham. Fair enough. In the playoffs, you had Luton in 6th, and I had Middlesbrough. Obviously, Luton
you didn't put Luton in the top 6.
I didn't. I thought Luton would not make it. I thought 7th or 8th. I would have 7th or 8th. I think I said back in the previous video. We both had Watford in 5th. Thank God they didn't finish there. Finished all the way down in 11th. You had Middlesbrough in 4th, which is spot on. West Brom I had for 4th, and you had them in 3rd. So
Corberán had the whole season. We would have been right.
Yeah, Steve Bruce. I had Sheffield United in 3rd and winning the playoffs, but they finished 2nd. We both had Norwich to finish 2nd, which they finished 13th. And you had Sheffield United to win it, which they did finish 2nd. And I had Burnley to win it, which they did. And that is our review on the championship. Let us know in the comments below how you thought your team did in the 2022-23 season. Let us know what you think next season will happen. We'll probably do one for next season, maybe. Well, I don't think we'll do it for weekly ones. Maybe. We'll have to wait and see. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at HonestFootball3. And we'll see you next time.